Welcome to Modus Cafe. Join us for fun, lighthearted, and educational conversations around training, athletic longevity, and the human side of climbing. With your hosts, Mercedes Pollmeyer and Katya Dev.
What's up, friends? Welcome to another podcast. Today, it's just me, Mercedes, for this podcast, and we're going to be talking about recovery techniques. So if you have been wanting more energy in the day, have better performance in your climbing sessions, and to lower your overall risk of injury, this podcast is going to be for you. So in today's podcast, we're going to cover recovery rituals. So these are things that are going to help you feel more energetic. Hopefully they do lower the risk of injury. I really do think some of these things, when you are tracking and measuring these things, you're going to be able to lower your risk. And you're just going to be able to climb better in all of your sessions. So we're going to talk about the role of energy in the body and how it affects recovery. We'll also talk about how to reevaluate your training intensity and volume, as well as create better habits around your nutrition, your sleep, your recovery techniques, as well as your mental well-being, because all of that affects how you recover. So all of these things are going to help you bounce back for better recovery, but as well as better climbing in your next session. So whether you're preparing for your next project indoors or you just want to feel less tired, stick around for this episode. So first, we're going to talk about what recovery actually is. And I want you to think about two concepts as we go through this podcast, because recovery really comes down to energy. And if you're not managing your energy well, you're not going to have enough to recover. And really what we want is to feel well rested before we go into our workout sessions, but we also want to feel well rested when we wake up in the mornings. So the first concept I want you to think about is energy management as a energy bank account. The body only produces a finite amount of energy, and then anytime you do something or anytime that your body is doing something, you're spending energy out of that bank account. So let's say if you're digesting food, you're spending energy. If you are making decisions in the day, every time you make that decision, you're spending energy. If you're doing a workout, you're spending energy. And depending on how intense that workout is, you're going to spend more energy from that bank account if it's a super high intensity workout. One thing that the body does not differentiate between is workout and stress. That energy, that intensity, or what the processes in the body for those two things are the same in the body. It has no idea the difference between the two. And if you're a human being listening to this podcast, most likely you have a lot of life stress. And because the body doesn't know the difference between a workout and life stress, you're spending a lot of energy throughout the day. And why is this? Because stress in the body elevates the heart rate, just like a workout does. Stress in the body also increases hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. And so all of those things take a lot of energy. So now you're spending all of this energy from your bank account, and not a lot is left over to recover. And really, the body does prioritize where that energy goes before it goes into recovery. So things like processes in the brain, our heart, it gives a lot of energy to the brain and heart. So if you're also working out super hard, then whatever is left over, and usually it's not enough when you take into consideration life stress. And so, your energy bank account is so depleted that maybe by the next day, you really haven't really recovered because there's just not enough energy in that bank account to replenish you. And really the only way to replenish that bank account is to eat. All right. And, to sleep. But in order to get energy into that bank account, you really do have to eat and eat properly. Now, the second concept that I want you to think about is all of the processes in the body. Think of it as an orchestra of systems. I just like to use this because everyone kind of knows what an orchestra is. There's different sections in an orchestra, and each section is focused on like one instrument. And depending on where you are in the song, the volume of one section is going to be a lot higher, or other sections are going to be a lot lower and kind of just like running in the background. And so that's kind of how the systems work in the body as well. Some are going to be louder and more prominent, and others are going to be kind of quieter and just running very slowly in the background. These systems are actually working together to bring the body back to homeostasis. And so, actually, all throughout the day, all of the systems are really checking and balancing to get back to homeostasis. And each one of these systems requires energy to function properly. And again, the body goes into prioritization. There is a hierarchy of how the body will prioritize certain systems as well, just like when it is prioritizing energy. For example, the body isn't going to prioritize muscle repair if you're having a panic attack. Okay. So anytime that your body's going through some sort of stress, the body's going to prioritize dealing with that stress before it goes into, oh, now it's time to repair the muscles in the body or to get rid of some of the damaged cells. So just think of it as a system that really does have a priority and a checklist, and it will do the things to make sure that you're surviving first. And then if there's energy left over, it's going to prioritize thriving. And our goal is always, to thrive. We don't want to just do the bare minimum. I really do think everyone wants to thrive. I think everyone wants to show up to climbing sessions feeling really good. No one wants to show up to a session feeling tired, because tiredness and fatigue really, they do challenge your motivation. It's harder to show up for sessions if you're just mentally drained all the time, or if your body feels really sluggish. So even though we want to feel really good before our sessions, and we want to wake up feeling really good, we continue to make decisions that actually put us in a deficit. Like we're making decisions in a climbing session that is going to create more fatigue in the body. Maybe we're making decisions throughout the day that actually don't help optimize our systems to work properly. So I hope by the end of this podcast, you'll know how to manage a climbing session so that you can optimize your recovery, and when it's time to stop a session, and to also help you jumpstart your recovery as soon as possible so that you decrease your risk of injury. So before we go into that, let's talk quickly about what is actually happening in the body when you are in a workout session and how recovery works to rectify these things. So at the tissue level, when we're climbing, lifting, going for a run, we're causing a lot of micro tears in the muscle fibers. And recovery is when the body repairs those muscle fibers so that those fibers can become stronger and more resilient. So at the hormone level, when we train, we actually increase the levels of cortisol, which is a good thing, but it is a catabolic hormone, which means that it breaks tissue down. But the good thing about cortisol is that it actually releases energy in the body so that the body can use it to work out. Okay, but chronically elevated levels of cortisol due to inefficient recovery or because of a lot of life stress can actually lead to more muscle breakdown, impaired immune function, and decreased performance. So if you have a lot of life stress, going back to that muscle breakdown, if you're working out plus you have a lot of stress, the muscle is constantly being broken down and doesn't always have enough time to repair before your next climbing session, which then ultimately increases your risk of injury. Okay, so to offset cortisol and shunt energy for recovery, the body actually releases anabolic hormones. So if you did a workout, cortisol elevates. When you're done with the workout, your anabolic hormones increase. So that's growth hormone and testosterone. And these hormones actually help to repair muscle and to grow muscle as well. These hormones actually peak during your deep stages of sleep, highlighting the importance of adequate sleep. All right, so let's talk about the energy and nutrient level during training sessions. So when you're training, you're actually going to be depleting glycogen in the muscle cell as well as ATP. And ATP is our power, our energy currency. This is how the body uses energy in the body is ATP. It also depletes amino acids and electrolytes. So proper recovery will focus on replenishing these which really highlights the importance of good nutrition. And remember that food is really the only way that we can replenish that energy bank account. Training sessions also affect our nervous system and our immune function. So proper recovery can ensure that we coordinate our muscles appropriately, and we can also reduce inflammation in the body to support immune function. This also helps us from getting sick. And lastly, we have to talk about mental fatigue, climbing sessions, life stress, all of that. There's a huge interplay between all of these things, and it can actually lead to burnout. Which reduces our motivation to train. So proper recovery and post-session recovery strategies can help us stay out of the slump. And some of my favorite strategies, will go into that a little more in this podcast, but it is having kind of like a journal or reflections after your climbing session. All right, so let's talk about how to jumpstart your recovery. But the first place that we need to start is actually in your climbing or workout session. And really, we have to highlight the role of intensity and volume. So the thing that a lot of us believe in Western society is that if you're feeling tired at the end of every workout, it means that you have done a very good job. And the only way to get anything substantial from a workout is to really beat yourself up and suffer in a workout. And I often hear that like soreness is something people are looking for, either at the end of a workout or the next day. All of this is not true. Like once you have actually reached fatigue by the end of a session, you have surpassed the point, the optimal point for recovery. And now I know that that might seem completely opposite to everything you've ever heard, but we are looking for a certain type of fatigue in an exercise, but not at the end of a session. All right. So there is a really great study by Dr. Tim Gabbett called The Training Injury Prevention Paradox. Should athletes be training smarter and harder? I'll link to the article in the show notes because I think it is actually very, very helpful and a really great read. But I just want to highlight some of the things that were in that article. So just a high level, he's saying that high training loads can be both protective against injuries as well as the cause of injuries. It also highlights the importance of measuring both internal and external loads and comparing 1 week of training to 4 weeks of training. An internal load means that your heart rate and RPE, like where those are in a workout, versus an external load, which is how much weight that you lifted or what climbing grade or how many climbs you did in a session. And there is a really strong correlation between high loads and lower risk of injury and better performance. But it doesn't take much to get to the point of it really pushing you into a higher risk of injury and illness. Okay. So there's just like a very fine line. And what I hope that we can kind of get to as climbers is understand where this line is, but that it's also okay to function or train below that threshold because you're still going to see improvement, especially for older athletes or athletes who want to climb for as long as possible, where longevity is really, really important to you. It's okay to train, back off a little bit from training and get really long-term benefits from it. All right. So what are we going to do if we know that higher intensity can help us, but it is also kind of like the thing that's going to get us injured? What are we going to do? And, the best way, honestly, is to track everything. If you don't know if you're training enough, or maybe you think you are training too much, or maybe you know you get injured often, it's time to track everything. So think about calories in, your resting heart rate in the morning, how many reps, sets, and weight that you're lifting, your total climbing attempts. Okay, this includes your warm-up, your total tops, your RPE, which is rate of perceived exertion, how many hours you've slept, and how you feel each day. It's really good to give yourself a little rating of how you feel each day. So all of this can help you establish first a baseline of where you are normally at in a week, and that this can be your guide. And all of these variables that you're tracking really increase the awareness in your body and how it feels during the day and during a climbing session. So let's talk about how to increase load with some actual guidelines. So Gabbett study did give some good general guidelines. And I talk about this with a lot of our clients because it is so tangible. So the first thing is that the highest risk of injury seems to be when the week to week load changes drastically, usually more than 10% load. When the training load is more like around 15% or more above the previous week's load, injury risk escalates to 20 to 50%. Okay. So to minimize the risk of injury, climbers should limit weekly training load to about 10% or less. All right. So that's week to week. You shouldn't be increasing more than 10%. So let's say, for example, if a climber attempts 100 boulders in a week, that's including the warm up, and then the following week, that same climber attempts 115 climbs, which really is only 3 to 5 attempts more each session. Now you have a 20 to 50% increase risk of injury. And that's honestly like not a huge margin. If you get super excited at the gym, maybe you're climbing with a friend who really motivates you and pushes you, it's very, very easy to overshoot these numbers. All right. I know that I have been there. I still do it sometimes. And I get super, super excited and climb a lot more in one session compared to what I did the previous session and even the previous week. So the first thing to do is to try not to overdo it in 1 week and even just in one session. Try to keep the training fairly steady with small increases in either intensity or volume. Okay. And make sure that the RPE is not jumping around rapidly. If you're not using RPE right now, you definitely should. And you can give yourself an RPE number within a, so if you're doing a climb, you can give an RPE number to that climb. And then you also give an RPE number to the end of the session. Like, how are you feeling? And RPE is great because according to Gabbett's study, fatigue is the biggest indicator of injury risk. So I'm going to say that again. Fatigue seems to be the biggest indicator of injury risk. So I have 2 pieces of advice for you in your sessions. One is to journal your training sessions, make sure you're putting your RPE down, track all of your climbs, even the terrain that you're climbing on, how many attempts that you're giving in a session, how long those sessions are. I like to keep a training journal. And for some of our clients, we actually have a training app where you can put all of those notes in and you can refer back to them. So if you're like, I don't remember what I did last week, great. You can just look back on what you did and just go up by 10%, no more than 10%, okay, in a week. All right. And make sure you stick to that. And the second piece of advice is to leave a session feeling snappy. This means that you are leaving energy in the tank at the end of your session. So if you feel like you could actually climb for at least like another 30 minutes to an hour, that's perfect. That's where you want to be when you are done with your session. Because again, you have to come back to this energy bank account. You have to leave something there so that you can recover for your next session. Okay. So that was a little bit about intensity and volume in your climbing session. So now we're going to move on to nutrition. Let's talk about the role of macronutrients. And I'm not going to go super in depth here because I want to keep this podcast on the shorter side, but we also have some other podcasts about nutrition. And if you're interested, you can always join our membership, our training membership, because we have a nutrition course that is going to help you build sustainable habits for the long term, so that you can really make small but impactful changes to your nutrition. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is my favorite, protein. So protein really is the building block of muscle repair. Any time of day, you should be consuming protein with every meal. not just after your sessions. So consuming high quality protein helps to repair muscle damage and replenish those amino acid pools that are in your muscle. So aim for lean sources of protein such as meats, eggs, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, and if you need plant-based options, things like lentils and tofu. So according to a position stand by the International Society of Sports Nutrition, consuming 20 to 40 grams of high quality protein post exercise maximizes muscle repair and growth. And so this is about 1 to 2 palm sizes of protein. But I do want to emphasize that you should be getting this with every meal, not just post exercise. All right, so let's move on to carbohydrates. Carbs, don't be afraid of them. They're wonderful for us. Carbs replenish those glycogen stores depleted during climbing sessions and lifting sessions. And when you pair carbs with protein, it actually enhances glycogen storage and muscle repair. So think of combinations like chicken and rice or a smoothie with fruit and Greek yogurt. So let's not forget about hydration because dehydration can significantly impact your recovery. Water is super essential. And there's an interplay of electrolytes as well. So make sure that you're drinking during your workouts and during your climbing sessions, especially if you're outside, make sure that you're consistently drinking water so that you can replenish that fluid. I don't really want to give any kind of numbers here, but aiming for a couple liters a day for most people. And then if you do sweat a lot, you probably need to get a lot more water. Okay, so we're going to talk about some minerals and micronutrients. So these all come from your fruits and vegetables, and you really want to try to get fruits and vegetables with every meal. And you're aiming for about 1 to 2 handfuls, like cupped handfuls, with every meal, so that you're getting all of your minerals, your vitamins, and antioxidants. So let's say a good post-climbing meal would be maybe some turkey and avocado. It could be a wrap, if you like, or a protein shake with spinach and berries, as well as thinking about meal prepping ahead of time so that you can make really great nutritional choices when you come home or you're driving back from the crag. That it's usually in those moments that we tend to make really bad decisions because one, we're tired, we're really hungry, and often at that point it's too late. And if you haven't prepared anything, then you're going to make a decision most likely that's not going to be the best for you because you just need food. So I really do like food, like meal prepping, and having your favorite snacks on hand. Okay, so now let's talk about sleep. And I think at this point, everyone understands how important sleep is. And we have a lot of research available on why getting adequate sleep and high quality sleep is so important, especially for folks who are highly active, like climbers, okay? Because really, it helps with muscle repair. It brings the hormones back into balance. We also kind of reset our neurotransmitters and so much more. But for some reason, sleep, even though we know how important it is, it's still really hard for people to prioritize. I think we don't often think of sleep as the number one thing to think about, but I really do think that sleep is the lowest hanging fruit for most people, especially when it comes to quality of sleep. So let's say you can't really change the amount of hours that you get. Maybe you can only get 6 hours of sleep. Can you make those 6 hours super high quality sleep? Okay. And normally, like things like having a really good sleeping environment can help with better quality of sleep. Maybe things that you do before you go to sleep, such as like avoiding blue light or making like dimming the light around you so that your body kind of knows, okay, it's time for me to go to bed, to go to sleep. But if you are someone who wants to prioritize your sleep and get more sleep, research kind of shows that anything but between 7 and 9 hours is going to be good enough, but this is still highly individual. Some people can get 7 hours and feel really, really great. Some people will need like 10 hours. Okay, so let's talk about some active and passive recovery strategies. So active recovery involves low intensity, continuous exercise that promotes blood flow without adding more stress to your muscles. So activities like walking, gentle cycling. Actually, swimming is amazing because it unweights the body as well. And typically the intensity is about zone 1, maybe getting it to zone 2. This is a conversational pace where maybe you're sweating very lightly and you're trying to go for 30 to 60 minutes. And this is a couple times a week. I would say like 3 times a week. And in fact, I would say daily. This is, the 10,000 steps each day. Aiming for that is really going to help you recover, but it's also just going to be very healthy for your cardiovascular system as well. Let's not forget about stretching and mobility work. So dynamic stretching and static stretching can really signal your parasympathetic nervous system to kick in. So this helps to lower your overall stress in the body and shifts the body toward more relaxation. And when your body is in this relaxation mode, that is the best state for recovery. Foam rolling is also a really great strategy to increase parasympathetic nervous system tone, and massage. If you can't always get a massage, you can do some foam rolling or use one of those little lacrosse balls, anything that feels good, and you don't want to be in too much pain. But if you are going to use foam rolling, then you want to spend maybe 5 to 10 minutes doing some foam rolling, but not spending too much time in one area. So massage is actually really wonderful. I think that people think that it actually changes your muscle tissue. It doesn't really. I think that the thing that massage really does is affect the nervous system. There is a perceived change in the body. Okay, so that was the active recovery strategies, passive recovery strategies, which is massage, but also heat therapy. So heat therapy such as dry sauna or infrared. And there's now like a ton of research supporting it, and it's been quite popular and for good reason. It seems to have an array of benefits, not just for recovery. For example, heat exposure results in the production of heat shock proteins, which help to protect cells from stress and helps with repair and protein synthesis. It also helps with production of growth hormone, which helps to build and repair muscle tissue. So if you have access to a sauna, awesome. You're lucky. And you could use it a couple times a week. And so if you do want to use it and you're just getting started, I would start with shorter time limits in the sauna. So really the first time you use it, you might not be able to stay in there for very long, and don't push yourself because you don't want to get dizzy. Your heart rate is going to get elevated. Make sure that you're being kind to your body and you're not pushing it. Otherwise, that is basically the opposite of what we're trying to do with our sauna sessions. Once you can kind of develop a ritual around saunas, you could potentially stay in a sauna for up to 20 minutes. And then anything more than 20 minutes doesn't really seem to have more benefit to the body. So if you're in there for about 15 to 20 minutes, that's great. And if you want to stay in there for shorter bouts, you can always alternate with cold therapy as well. And there is some research on cold therapy. I'm not really going to talk about cold therapy very much, but if you want to, you can go back and forth between hot and cold. And the cold therapy doesn't need to be for very long. 30 seconds to a minute is great, up to 5 minutes. And of course, the temperature of the water really does matter. 60 degrees or a little bit less than that is good enough to really give some of that cold therapy benefit. All right. So here is an example of how you can actually put the active and passive strategies together to basically create a recovery day. I really do like these recovery days, and they're usually focused around the continuous exercise. So you'll start with maybe 30 minutes of walking, or you can do the air bike. I really like the Airdyne bike because you're using both your arms and your legs. And for climbers, getting that blood flow in the arms is super important. You could also try a rowing machine if it fits your body and it feels good. And then after that, you could do some dynamic stretches like leg swings, arm circles. And then you can spend 5 to 10 minutes foam rolling all of the major muscle groups. So, like the pecs, the lats, the back, the quads, glutes, and you only spend maybe 30 seconds per body area, and then you can move on. And then after the foam rolling, I really like to do static stretching. This is where you can really breathe and sit in a position to really open up some of those tighter areas in the body. For example, the hip flexors, if you're someone who sits at a desk a lot. The lats for climbers, that is an area that we need to focus on because it really does pull on the lower back and it rounds the shoulders forward. So we want to keep those tissues kind of more flexible and open. And, these static stretches can be anywhere between 30 to 90 seconds. And if you want more guidance on that, I actually have a free flexibility course on my website at modusathletica.com, and you can sign up for that. And I have a whole free routine and mini course for you all about how to start with flexibility training. Okay, so to kind of end your recovery session, I really like to have people lay on their back. You can have your legs up at 90 degrees on a box, or you can just lay flat and just breathe. You're breathing and letting your diaphragm move up and down. Like you can just sit there and relax, or lay there and relax. I would do this for a couple minutes, set a timer for maybe 2 minutes and start there. And then once you're done with your breathing, you can go and finish up with some sauna. That would be like a recovery day. You can also incorporate all of those things into a regular workout session. So let's say, you could start your climbing sessions with some walking. I think the walking is a really great way to transition from life to workout. So you can walk for 10 to 15 minutes, getting your heart rate up, getting a slight sweat, and then you can move into some dynamic movements in the body. And then you can get into your climbing session. And then once you're done with your climbing session, you can do some static stretching, do the breathing, and then end with some sauna. So you can really apply these recovery techniques to your everyday sessions. So we're going to move on to the last piece of recovery, which is the mental and emotional side. So if we can reduce our life stress, we're going to have more energy to recover. So our energy bank will be abundant, and we'll have more room for more movement if you want to move more, and you'll have more energy for enjoyment. So if you're feeling stressed, here are a few things that can help. I love meditation. Meditation is a great time to move inwards and to quiet your brain and to breathe. This gives us a time to just focus on one thing, and that is your breath. And it's been shown that by meditating, it can actually lower your cortisol levels and promote relaxation. You can start with 5, even just 3 minutes a day can help. I like anywhere between 5 and 10 minutes. Another strategy that kind of goes hand in hand with meditation is visualization. And visualization, I talk a lot about visualization for getting better at your climbing movement, to get better at problem solving, sequencing, but you can also use visualization to lower your stress. You can actually apply this to your climbing. If there's cruxes in your climb that make you feel stressed, like if you feel like, oh, I'm starting to sweat in my palms a little bit just thinking about this move, I'm like, I can feel some fear creeping up. All of these things are basically increasing anxiety. And so visualization can help you kind of manage that. And when you're visualizing yourself being really confident in those cruxy moves, and if you're visualizing yourself being successful, it can actually help you lower your anxiety and lower your stress for that session as well as future sessions. So that's just another reason to practice visualization in climbing. And lastly, try to avoid climbing burnout or burnout in any aspect of your life. If you don't want to climb, guess what? You don't have to climb. I think if you want to work out and climbing doesn't feel very good in the moment, do something else to move your body, because the worst thing that we can do is develop a really unhealthy relationship with climbing and believing that climbing a certain grade will actually make you feel more worthy, that you have more self-worth. And this is just really not a great way to have a joyful and fulfilled life. All right. You will only feel worthy if you accept yourself as you are, and you are already good enough, my friend. All right. So to end this podcast, I want to highlight some common mistakes and beliefs that climbers have. And And one of this is connected to overtraining. A lot of climbers tend to overtrain because of the belief that feeling tired at the end of sessions is a good thing. And it's really not. If you got pumped, if your arms feel like noodles, if you are continuously falling off of climbs because your hands are opening up and you're tired, these are all signs that you are pushing too hard. And now you are past the point of a quality session. And if you do this continuously, you really do kind of end up in that overtraining mode. Another belief is that people think that hard hangboard sessions are good. So things like max hangs and repeaters. Both of these protocols focus on fatigue. They're designed to get you tired. And again, going back to Gabbett's study, getting fatigue puts you at a higher risk of injury. So the key is to push just hard enough so that you can progress slowly and always leave gas in the tank. And that kind of goes hand in hand with lifting heavy. I think a lot of people think that you have to lift very heavy in order to get something out of it. And we do, as strength and conditioning coaches, we are, taught that 80%, 85% or more is where you're going to see the greatest gains in strength. But you also gain strength at lower intensities as well. It's also difficult to gauge how hard 85% is unless you're testing. And the only people who should be testing 1 rep maxes are people who have a lot of experience in those lifts. And most folks who are climbers who are using lifting as a supplement, you're probably not really experienced enough. Majority of climbers aren't experienced enough to really do the 1 rep max testing, even 3 rep max testing. So the best way really is to figure out RPE, or how many reps in reserve you have in that lifting, in that set. All right. And that's going to really help you stay away from too much fatigue. So you really want to stop before your technique fails. The next common mistake that a lot of climbers make is consistency of workouts. You really want to try to stay consistent. But if 1 week you only manage to climb once that week, and then the next week you're climbing 3 times that week, now you have really increased your risk of injury. So make sure that you get real with yourself, come up with an amount of sessions a week that feels very doable. And if you can't make it to the gym, then you can't let yourself off the hook. You still have to do something to move the body so that the following week isn't going to be detrimental to you. All right. So make this non-negotiable. If you can't make it to the gym, do something else. Go for a walk, do a home workout. Stick to the agreement that you have made with yourself that, okay, I'm going to work out 3 days a week, every week. All right. The last common mistake is don't ignore minor injuries. If you do, they end up becoming more chronic. And really, once you feel something, just back off a little bit. Doesn't mean you need to stop climbing. It just means you need to work around your little niggle. And then once you feel that pain, maybe go see a professional. The earlier you see a professional, the faster you can rehab that and get back to climbing hard again. We're getting close to finishing this podcast. So now to actually implement these recovery strategies. I know that I just listed like 9 categories of recovery, and each category has about 3+ recommendations. And how are you supposed to do all of this? Well, you don't. Okay. You actually start with what you are already doing and double down on it. You really want these, like the things that you're doing, to become more like rituals. And the things that you're not doing, you're going to introduce them one at a time very slowly and develop more recovery rituals over time. All right. Because what you don't want to do is, okay, Mercedes, I'm going to do all of these things. And you've just added, you have added too much. And now you are actually tired because you have recovered way too much. Okay. But I do I do have the saying, recover just as hard as you train. I think that mindset goes a long way, but you still have to slowly ramp up your recovery strategies. Okay. So that's really, really important. So you have to build habits out of all of these things. And it's better if you can stack your habits to create a ritual. And a ritual really is something that becomes automatic. Same with a habit. You know, if it is not a habit yet, if it's not a ritual yet, that's okay. Give yourself some grace and don't panic if you're not doing all of these things. So let's talk about how you can double down on what you're already doing. So for example, if you are already eating some protein at every meal, try to add a bit more protein. You know, so again, going back to the 1 to 2 palm sizes of protein, if you're getting almost a palm, try to get a full palm of protein with your meals. If you are already going for a walk a couple times a week, try to increase the duration of those walks. So if you're getting maybe a 10-15 minute walk a couple times a week, try to increase that to about 25 minutes per week. And so that's about 10 minutes increase for that walk. But go back to the 10% increase in load. It still also applies to recovery strategies. So don't overdo it. Don't just go into 3 60-minute walks all of a sudden, okay? Because that is going to make you actually feel a lot more tired. All right, so then you're going to start adding habits. And the best way to do this is to stack it onto a habit that you already have. So for example, if you struggle with hydration, you can stack that. You can have a glass of water when you are already maybe drinking something else. For example, in the mornings, if you like to enjoy a coffee beverage or a tea beverage before you drink those things, fill a glass of water, 12 ounces, drink that whole thing before you drink your fun beverages. All right. So that's one way of stacking a habit. Maybe another way is not getting enough fruits and vegetables. This is one of my areas that I constantly having to work with or work around. You know, adding a handful of fruits and or vegetables to every meal, because you're already eating. Everybody eats a couple times a day, and you might as well just make sure that you're getting a fruit or a vegetable with that meal. And the thing is that you do need to have those things on hand. I do understand that, you know, like fruits and vegetables, they don't last very long. So you do have to kind of go to the store more regularly, but you can get things that last a little longer. Like apples are great. Apples and berries are awesome because they're mobile. You can take them on the go. And I know for me, I live in Seattle. I do have to kind of like run around the city quite a bit. And if I can have food that I can have on hand with me and not have to stop somewhere on the way and make terrible choices, you know, like it's better in the long run for me if I have those things on hand. All right, so I challenge you to pick one recovery ritual, as we discussed, and incorporate it into your routine this week. So maybe it's improving your post-climbing meal, maybe it's adding some foam rolling or prioritizing sleep, but the first thing that you can really do is just double down on what you're already doing. Okay, so if you found today's episode helpful, please subscribe, leave a review, because that always helps us reach more climbers just like you. All right, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.